a child is born with only two fears, the fear of darkness and the fear of height. So there are a lot of biases. I don't know where the list will start and where it's going to end. Growing in a Hindu family in India, that you have to always have that honor and respect for your elders and your ancestors. I think that's something where I think that's a bias that I learned to break, because
If you're given a chance to relive your journey, what changes you might make?
I mean, I'd probably request God to, maybe, uh, I don't know, maybe I would be born in a place which has a lot of entrepreneurial zeal and banking available. What amazes me is the youngsters these days. I'll probably learn something from them instead of teaching them something. And that is a reality which has been very difficult for me to accept. It has taken me years to take that bias out. They're not realizing is that you cannot get large industries without excess of energy. Crown is going to do whatever it can. We are trying to bring gas to areas where other people have failed.
This is the Oil and Gas Breaking Bias show, where we are going to invite industry leaders to talk about their journeys and also technologies of tomorrow in an effort to break some of the biases that might have formed around this energy industry. Hello, everyone. I hope you're happy and healthy. I'm Ananja, and you are listening to the Oil and Gas Breaking Bias show. And today I'm very happy because I will be joined by co-founder and CEO of Crown LNG, Swapan Kataria. Swapan has more than 3 decades of leadership and entrepreneurial experience across different continents from Asia to America, and we will talk more about it. And today, let's deep dive into his journey and also get some of the insights about this global energy infrastructure that Crown LNG is shaping around us. So with that, welcome, Swapan. Swapan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Anand, thank you for having me in your show. I really appreciate it. Let's see if we can break this bias.
Definitely. And we'll talk about lots of bias. But before, as I said, I have seen your profile. Like you have worked almost every continent, every country. So we'll talk more about it, that experience.
Of course. Yeah, I've lived in every continent except South America.
I think sooner or later you might have opportunity to live there as well.
We are trying, believe me, we are trying South America now, and I hope I get a chance.
Definitely. So, Sopan, as I said, like you have a very impressive experience, but this show is about not just about your professional journey, but also about your personal journey, and lots of things to talk about. So, I don't want to delay any further. So, if you are okay with that, can you please walk us through your professional and personal journey and any of the biases or some of the biases that you might have came across?
I think somebody once told me that, a child is born with only two fears, the fear of darkness and the fear of height. And overall, you just, try to fight all the fears that you gather in the world. So there are a lot of biases. I don't know where the list will start and where it's going to end. But from an oil and gas perspective, I think one of the real challenges that we've always faced, we're not a multinational company. When we started, and today, yes, we operate in many parts of the world, but 30-year journey was not just that easy when we began. So there were a lot of challenges, and there were a lot of setbacks. There were a lot of people who didn't want to kind of support a startup, call it, at that time. And I think today, when I look back, there is one thing that I always promote, even in our companies, with our people who are buying products or giving contracts out. No wonder we need to go with the larger engineering companies, the larger service providers. But I always think that we probably give more opportunity to entrepreneurial intellect and newcomers than probably other companies out there. So I feel, I don't know how other people do it, but for us, it's a huge focus to promote newcomers.
Definitely, and they can bring a fresh perspective to everything.
100% right. I think if you have someone who's dealt with something for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, they tend to become kind of molded in their fashion and their thought process. And I've always said that, I have a lot of respect, growing in a Hindu family in India, that you have to always have that honor and respect for your elders and your ancestors. And I've never moved away from that. But I think everybody has always told me that you should always listen to your ancestors or your elders. I think that's something where I think that's a bias that I learned to break, because it does not matter if your elder was unsuccessful at doing something, because the circumstances of the situation when they were making that decision, let's say, one of my elders was making a decision in a particular circumstance back in 1970s. I'm making the same decision in 2020s. The circumstances have changed. If they were not successful back then, doesn't mean you won't be successful today. So I think one of the core biases that I had to break was that, use the experiences of others. You have to experience of your own. You can certainly learn from that, but you cannot use that experience to to kind of control your judgment.
And if you don't explore, then you don't know what to get or what not to get. So everybody
Exactly.
has its own experience.
Yeah.
It's good to learn from somebody else's experience, but you have to do by yourself.
Yeah. And you have to weigh out the circumstances of reality that are around you today, because that experience that the other person had, probably in the same situation, was in with different circumstances in the history. So what you're facing today, you have to make your own judgment call. You can learn from others, but you cannot use that as a guiding principle.
Definitely. And I also seen like you have a very diverse experience. Like you worked in India, Africa, in Russia, and also different part of Europe. How it all summed up, if you look back, how it all helped in your this professional journey.
I think when I started my journey, and I started as a trader.
Mhm.
So, we started from electronics in Singapore to Russia. And that is where we actually went into oil and gas business, into trading. And then we mostly worked out of the Middle East most of our life. And then we moved to the US, Canada. So if you look at that journey overall, it is only focused on one thing, trying to find product at a competitive price. Because if you have the right product at the right price, then there are buyers who are ready to buy it. That's a
Definitely.
simple underlying principle, but it's not that easy, because you have to have the right relationships. You have to be at the right place at the right time in price variances to be able to utilize that to your benefit. And we don't have access to, the banking similar to Swiss firms or UK firms or US firms. So we're primarily from Asia. So when we started looking at it from inside out, we said, okay, one of the big things that we need to do is to try and see if we can control the product in some way. So back in 2008, we decided to kind of move away from oil totally into gas, and we started looking at doing LNG trading.
Mhm.
And it was not easy because, back then, most of the contracts were government to government. Qatar was certainly the biggest. It's certainly one of the biggest today as well. But back then, it pretty much was the only player, apart from Nigeria and Brunei. So having access to product was very difficult. And what we realized back then was, if we wanted to get into the play, there was a missing link. And the missing link was these regas terminals or the liquefaction terminals. Because if you could have the cash layout and the probability of getting into these, then you would have certain value chain, part of the value chain that you can control and be a part of the bigger picture. So I think that's where we started. And at that time, Canada and US was coming up,
Mhm.
right? Obviously, anybody who's trading product or wants to sell product has to gravitate towards the place where it's available. And we quickly realized in the US that it was very expensive to do. And we realized also that, if you had to build it on water, it was much cheaper through a permitting cycle than building it on land. And as you know,
Big challenge is always a big challenge for these mega projects.
it was a huge challenge because, you look at FERC, which is the land authority in a way in US, regulatory authority, and then you look at MARAD. The process in MARAD sounded to be much simpler to us. What we didn't realize initially was that, yes, it sounds similar, much easier, or quicker. I shouldn't use the word easier, because it was not easy, but it was much quicker, and there was a set time frame for correspondence to go back and forth. So it gave us a realistic timeline to invest our capital into. But what we realized was that, engineering wise, it was more difficult,
Mhm.
because
Yeah, definitely.
traditionally most of these projects were built on land,
Yes, you're
right?
right.
And on the water, you're now facing a hurricane zone.
Totally new challenges that you don't think about when you build something onshore.
Exactly. And when you're looking at offshore in the Gulf of Mexico, everything was fine. Technology is there. But can it operate in a hurricane atmosphere when the wave heights are, 4, 5, 6 meters? And I think what we realized, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to get insurance for that. It wasn't easy to get funding for that. So it's very difficult for you to go back to your customer and say, hey, give me a purchase order for 20 years, but I cannot guarantee you product for more than at least 6 or 7 months or 8 months in a year. Anybody who's talking to you say, are you kidding me? I can't switch off my power plant or my fertilizer plant or my petrochemical plant waiting for the product to come 3 months later because
It's
of
all
a
about
hurricane.
consistent supply.
Exactly. And we realized that the floating barge may not be able to do it for us. And then we gravitated towards doing a jack-up rig process. And the jack-up rig process can operate 365 days, but it doesn't have tanks. So if there was a hurricane coming and you had a vessel moored next to a jackup rig, which was loading all the liquid molecules while you're liquefying, you have to basically take that vessel away. And if your storage is gone, you have to switch off. So that is when we actually went to a gravity-based structure, which has the molecule storage inside the belly. I don't know if you had a chance to see what.
I saw your model actually during
Okay.
gas tech. Yes.
Yeah. So if you've seen it, and you know, on the coming gas tech, we are presenting an actual model. So a 3D model, which you'll see at our booth. And then if you're there, you'll probably be able to kind of ask questions because there are small little parts that we'll be able to explain you much better. But bottom line being, it could address harsh weather conditions for LNG especially. And we realized that, you know, Gulf of Mexico was not the only place which had harsh weather. There are tons of places. We'd hired a company to do a research for us, and they came back with, I think, over 40 locations globally where LNG was either available to sell or there was a need to import it. But because of harsher weather, the regular, you know, traditional processes would not be able to cater 365-day operations. So I think that happened in 2016, 2017. And I think that's where really the fundamental relevance of Crown came about, because it is scalable. It can operate in a place where other people are not giving or offering solutions. So all of a sudden it becomes a reality. So I think
Amazing. It's amazing. So now you have seen that there's a problem, and now it's like this need to be fixed, and this idea of the Crown LNG came from there. It's amazing.
I should not be quoting this big guy, but you know, the father of oil in my eyes is Mr. Rockefeller, right? And he was asked one time a question, and it's in his biography, that, you know, he was asked a question that, you know, how did you make your money? And his answer was, I found a gap and I filled it. So it's a very simple answer, but at the end of the day, I think we found a gap in the LNG market, that there was potentially to build on land. Then there was solutions for FSRUs, floating LNGs, which could go in benign waters. But then if the water was harsh and you could not build on land, what do you do? And that's where Crown put
Came
in
into
the
picture, yeah.
effort. Yeah. And now Crown is probably one of like a handful of companies which can even offer this solution globally. And we are doing it because we've gone ahead and got a full approval from the Indian government for 7.2 million tons. And if you look at the total licenses available in India today, that would almost come to almost 11% of India's total import capacity. So if India is going to be able to operate on a gravity-based structure in a typhoon zone on the east coast of India, then Vietnam is the next, and Scotland is another one. You look at places which have higher wave conditions, at least 2, 3, 4 months in a year, and those are the target markets for us, which other people don't want to touch.
That's amazing. So you're not just solving a problem, but also trying to find new avenues for this global market.
Yes, and imagine it's not just about bringing gas. You know, gas helps people cook their food. Gas helps bring industry because it is energy, right? If you don't have the energy to run power plants, and without that electricity, you cannot commit or make bigger industries, and without bigger industries, you cannot create jobs.
And
So
that's
it's a cycle that, you know, it creates a ripple effect.
definitely, and this reminds me. I was reading like one of the article long time ago is about natural gas. Like when natural gas or LNG, people see as energy transition fuel, but I see this is the fuel actually which is going to stay here for longer. There is one example comes up in my mind in Vietnam. They have made a commitment to go towards gas, but they could not get at the right price. So what they did, they needed energy, so they went back to the coal. So if a solution like you who can provide energy at the right price and or the place where it is needed, I think that's a big help towards energy transition.
So I think that's a very, very good point that you make, because a lot of people have this notion that, you know, building something with a concrete structure like we do, the gravity-based structure, is more expensive. I think if we calculate it, and it actually is cheaper than an FSRU per MMBTU basis because it has a longer lifespan.
Definitely,
So you
definitely.
amortize differently, and you financially engineer it differently, and it makes much better financial sense. In fact, we could technically be charging more in a way to basically, you know, places which cannot have another access. But our process and our thinking has never been to to be very greedy. Greed is important, but only to a certain extent. How much can you eat? But more importantly, if we can provide more solutions and make LNG market bigger, And because not only from and who is going to gain from it? To be honest, I see America gaining from it more than anybody else because US has more molecules than anybody else
And
in the
also, like,
market.
as a humankind, we are all going to gain. As I mentioned,
Yes,
like, if it's available to the places where it was not available at the right price at the right time, I think we are all going to suffer.
you're
But
100% right.
then this gas thing is going there for a long time. Then what people are talking about it, and they always say, like, it's going to die in next decade, and and then next decade, and that decade is never coming.
I think Mr. Trump has said things right to an extent because you cannot have. I mean, if the wind keeps blowing
Yes,
24 hours, then maybe you can rely on it. But it's Mother Nature.
yes,
It is
definitely.
not going to operate on demand. We have to play around Mother Nature's realities instead of Mother Nature abiding and bowing down to what we want it to do. I
Definitely.
think it's simple fact which humans need to realize.
So, a very interesting journey, very interesting solution that you're offering to the market. But how you see this market is going towards, like, what challenges and they should overcome?
I think you mentioned one big challenge was you have to divide the word on population for a minute, right? So if you look at the population mix, the maximum population is in Asia, coming up in Africa, and maybe Asia can be divided into South Asia and Southeast Asia. And if you start calculating the market, just take China out for a minute, because I think China is very well organized. It's very well capitalized. They look at their goal, they pursue it, and they get it done. I think somebody listening to me might not like the fact that I've praised China so much, but the fact is they have delivered. So to me, I
They have
think the way
capability.
I look at it is the growth is based on the population mix. Now, if you look at Asia, one of the biggest discrepancies that I see is we are trying to impose European and American labor costs and expect Asia to pay for it. And there has to be some sort of a calculation on price parity because uh, you cannot afford to pay, $50,000-$60,000 a year to an employee and expect India to pay the same price because they're for the same employee, similar amount. I think I'd seen a study at one place. One month of salary, what buys you in labor in America, the same amount of money can buy you maybe 4 to 5 months in Mexico or in Colombia. You can buy 6, 7 months in maybe Hungary or other places in like Vietnam or Taiwan. And then if you go to India, you can do 11 to 12 months, and in China you can do 16 to 20 months. So if you put that into perspective for a minute, you're expecting somebody who's making 1/16 or 1/10 the salary, expect him to pay the same price that an American consumer is paying, and add shipping, add
It's
all the
not
things
possible.
required. It becomes a little bit unaffordable. So we have to, so there has to be a limit for that price, and I think there has to be a limit to corporate greed. So I think that is something which I left behind when I left India and I came to North America, because I realized how important greed is, because that's what keeps you going. But there has to be a limit to it. So
But
I
that's like,
think if you ask me, there's one challenge that we face in is the pricing. It's not so much to do with the price of infrastructure. I think it's a lot more to do with the price of product. And I think somewhere the governments have to come to realize that, okay, they have to work with each other.
yes. And I think that, sorry, like, yeah, go ahead. You were saying
No,
something.
and I don't see much happening. Like if US wants to sell its product, they need to understand what an Indian consumer can afford, a Vietnamese consumer can afford, not what they want to pay themselves just in their bonuses and what do you call salary.
Yeah, it's not possible. And that also is going back to our examples of Vietnam, when the country was had ambition to go in that journey, where they had ambition to use more and more gas, because Vietnam is one of the developing country in these days, but they could not do it because the prices changed dramatically, and math was not working, as you have well explained. So they cannot pay you the same money what European can pay. So
Actually, it's
they
funny
didn't
you
have any
bring.
choice.
Anand, you've touched a very sour topic with me. Okay, it's talking about Europe. So I was sitting in Europe. I think it was some sort of a gas conference, and there was this very high level person who basically commented and said, "Hey, we lasted last year winter. We were not going to have a problem this year either." And I looked at that person. I said, "Yes, you lasted last winter, but did you even realize how many people around the world could not sleep because they didn't have any gas?" You know, It's a cause and effect.
I know.
So we don't realize how this world is placed so small today, dependent on each other, that one thing Europeans can afford, you're 100% right. But that creates that gap in Asia, right? And I think there are two ways to look at it. The way, and I'll share these two thoughts with you. I don't know if it'll make sense. I was talking to a US producer not too long ago, and there we were discussing same issue, pricing, and they came back and said, Swapan, if we're not able to sell at the market price, we can just put it in the ground, and it's an asset for us.
So use it later.
Exactly. And my answer to that was, what's the guarantee you're going to be able to monetize in 10 or 20 years from now? Human greed is about developing new things, right? If you don't sell and monetize your gas today, it may just keep sitting there forever because there will be more technologies coming out.
And but that also goes back what you said, how Crown came into the picture. So you saw the gap, and then you
Yes.
came with this, some innovation, some solution to fill that gap. So if
Yep.
somebody doesn't want to sell that gas today, expecting like a market will be like that for next 2 decades, but that's not going to happen. There will be gap, and somebody else will come to fill that gap.
And so I told you two things. So one thing is from the US side, for example, or from the Qatari side, or the guys who are producing it. I think they want to obviously get the right best value for their product. It's only fair. The producers realizing that they can leave their product in the ground or they can monetize it before another technology comes out. I think on the other side, what Vietnam, India, and other countries have to realize, gas is not going to be the 100% product for their energy mix. It is going to be a part of it, right? They need to average it out. So if you go to India, for example, I hear this all the time that, hey, you can get solar for like, 3 pennies to a dollar. Why would I pay 8 pennies to a dollar or 10 pennies to a dollar to buy gas? And my
There's no
answer to that
motivation.
is, no, no, and I have an answer to that. I'm not saying, I think everybody realizes, everybody has the short sight looking at what they're trying to lose between this year and next year. What they're not realizing is that you cannot get large industries without excess of energy. And without that, you cannot employ people and create jobs. So you want to save a few pennies every year, or you want to employ 350 million people, which are going to be having a probability to get a job. I think between the next 20 years, there are 350 million youth that is going to be starting to look for jobs in India. There is no industry coming to employ them. I mean, I shouldn't say that no industry coming is not the right word.
But it's not
The,
coming
the,
at
the
the
industry,
right pace.
it's not coming at the right pace and at the right quantum
Yes.
to address it. So to me, I think you want to save a few pennies, and this is the problem with the bureaucracy, because they are being just taught to say, okay, does the exchequer have the money to pay for it now? Just liberalize it. Let the private companies come in and do it. Market will fix itself. That's what
Yes.
America does, and I think they do it right. You cannot, national oil companies cannot keep controlling things forever, right? And if you open the market correctly, I think countries like India and Vietnam is a prime example, actually. I think if they privatize the access to transmission, they privatized regasification, they privatized import of gas. It doesn't matter if the price is $10 or $15. If I have the ability to sell it for $15, let me,
And
right?
definitely. And the market will decide what the price it should.
Exactly. So I want to sell it at $20 an MMBTU. What is it to you if I can sell it? If I cannot sell it, I won't be able to sell it, right?
Because market ultimately it will come to the right price. That's what they say.
Thank you. So
That's
I
how
think
economy works. Yeah.
I think so. They're both sides that need to adjust. America needs to, or the producers like Qatar and America need to realize that the countries can afford only an X amount. You can't squeeze more. It's everything. Everybody is not Europe,
Yes.
and those countries have to realize that, are they really going to be sticklers for every penny? Because what they're losing out is the power of the youth. That has more energy. That has more bigger future than a few pennies on gas.
And nobody to think like that. That's the problem. Like we think about the short term, and nobody thinks about 5, 10 years or 20 years or maybe longer. Like because when you're building your nation, you have to think from that perspective. And sometimes that thought process is missing. But thanks for bringing those really, really valid points. But one thing, as I mentioned to you before, your journey itself was very interesting. Yes, lots of things we talked about industry, but how you moved from India to the different places, and now you are in Scotland. Like we are recording today, and you are in Scotland.
That's correct.
So what helped you to grow you as a person?
I think trading just took me to different parts of the world. As I said, we were a small company. We had a lot of fire in our belly, and we had to do something because we had limited capital. If we don't do it within a certain amount of time, and we don't achieve goals and make money, we would not be able to survive. And as we grew, we took on more liabilities with more salaries and more people. Then all of a sudden, as your family grows, you become responsible for all of them. So today, I think we operate in I don't know, 29 countries. So when you have to travel so much and manage so many people, it automatically creates a sense of responsibility and participation. So today we are lucky that the oil and gas industry is, especially LNG, is on a sort of a growth curve. It's not in the doldrums like many other industries out there.
Mhm.
So we feel we're in a good spot today to catapult into the next level. But it wasn't the same 10 years ago. Back in 2008, 2010, it was quite tough for us. And through COVID, it was certainly not easy
Was
because
not
that
easy.
2.5 years was, I know it was tough for the whole world, but for a smaller company, it is even more difficult. So
Uh,
I think now the biggest bias that we need to break is that we're not small anymore.
on the other side, if you're small and nimble, like, and then you can move fast, you can innovate. That's I always see. Then that's the big. Some of the big companies, they miss that part. They become so
No,
big and so bureaucratic. Like for every decision, you have to go through many people. But companies like you, like, can bring those ideas and can move fast and also execute fast.
and I think I see that now as we've grown, that one of the biggest strengths we've had is our ability to make quick decisions with a small group of people. But now, as you know, Crown is publicly traded. It is on
Now more
NASDAQ.
and more people are added.
There is a lot of compliance that we need to work around, and we learn that with time. But yeah, I think our teams are missing that ability to make those quick decisions now, and we're trying to put systems in place where this can not grow into more difficult situations for us where we lose opportunities,
Yeah,
because you
makes sense.
cannot keep filling Excel sheets and backup thing while the opportunity is gone.
I know, like,
Somebody
and
else got it.
that's exactly what happens with the big companies. They die for their own burden because the systems are there to help you to run your business. When systems becomes everything, then innovation goes away and takes some. And there are many examples, and the company has done this thing in the past. But I think Crown in the right track with your leadership. So I don't think that will happen, and that should happen. But it's moving in the right direction. That I can say.
We certainly hope so. God has been kind to bring us to this point today, and we certainly have a very good team. And if everybody has the ability to make decisions and move forward faster, I think it'll only improve, not only for us, for our shareholders.
That makes sense. Makes sense. So you already had very interesting journey, but if you're given a chance to relive your journey, what changes you might make?
I mean, I'd probably request God to, maybe, uh, I don't know, maybe I would be born in a place which has a lot of entrepreneurial zeal and banking available. So instead of doing it in 30 years, maybe we'll be able to do it in 10 or 15 years. But yeah, I mean, I think the journey has been nice. We've been blessed with the right amount of people and the right kind of people around us. And I think if that continues, I think we can do a lot more in a very little time going forward, especially with now the ability to be on public markets.
That makes sense. So you talk about like like you want to be born the place which is more business friendly. Do you come from a business background? Like is your
No,
father?
no, not at all. Not at all. I think more service class and political background. With the
Okay.
family. It has nothing to do with business. And then you just lived and learned because nobody was there to guide us when we were growing up. So, but now we've kind of. I don't say that we've learned everything. I think every day in the morning when I get up, I say, okay, I have to learn something new. But I will tell you one thing. What amazes me is the youngsters these days. I could have a conversation with a young person, and I think 7 out of 10 times I'll probably learn something from them instead of teaching them something. And that is a reality which has been very difficult for me to accept. It has taken me years to take that bias out. That much I can assure you. But they're sharp. They have knowledge. They read things. They
Yeah.
have the ability to absorb and keep so much in their mind. I don't think I can handle it. But the best part is to be their friends. If they're sitting on the opposite side, you have a problem.
But that's the thing. They also bring new perspective because sometimes you know too much, and then you cannot think outside. But you have somebody like a kid. They ask you so many questions, and sometimes you're like, I never thought like that.
No, no, I think one of the biggest things that I have learned over the last few years is that, learn from them.
Yes.
They are the future, not for any other reason. They have the knowledge. And if we were to be able to give them the ability to make decisions and take risks, I think they can do wonders.
I think that brings us to our rapid fire round, because I know
Sure.
it's very hard to cover everything in this 30, 40 minutes. So I will try to get more and more information from you
Sure.
using our rapid fire round. Okay. So are you ready, Sopin?
I'll try.
Let's see. What's the most unexpected place you work has taken you?
I think one of the most unexpected places that I went to was Argentina.
Okay.
Yeah, I always wanted to go there, but not for business. But I wanted to go there for as a tourism. But when I went there for business, I realized what I'd been missing. In fact, that's one of the countries I'd like to live in if
So
I
we
ever had
talked
the
about,
chance.
yeah. So we talked about your South American dream.
Yes. So I went there for work for the first time, and since then I just crave to go back every time. Every opportunity I can get to go back to Argentina, I will.
Oh, that's amazing. If you had to explain LNG to a 5-year-old, how would you do it?
We have a famous joke in our office, and me and my partner always play around with it because there are a lot of people who come in and tell us, "Oh, we know how to do LNG," and we just ask them a simple question: "What is the color of LNG?"
We are still figuring out.
Yes. So yeah, I think we have fun with that one. Yeah.
That's good. What's the best business advice you have ever received?
Listen to the youngsters.
Oh, really?
Don't shun them. Do not say even once that they don't know. You just have to accept the fact that they know better than you.
So it's good to know, because in previous episodes we talk about age bias.
Mhm.
Sometimes we will say you're too old, you're too young, and we don't appreciate everybody brings different colors to the discussion. So what I'm hearing, like you also appreciate like bringing different views into decision making.
Yeah. We have seen that there is a huge benefit of listening and putting the young people in leadership roles. They will make mistakes, but that's the reality you have to live with. We all made mistakes.
Makes sense.
You cannot be perfect, but they will create solutions in much faster time than you and me would, probably.
Makes sense. If you could solve one global energy challenge overnight, what would it be?
I would probably have to talk to God for that because if winds can run 24 hours and sun can be out 24 hours, I don't think we'll be having there will be no bias left
Yeah,
against
you have
the
to pray hard.
renewables. So I
You
don't know how better to say something in a sarcastic way.
Okay, last not the least, what's your go-to strategy for making tough business decisions?
Oh man, I think tough business decisions, one of the go-to strategies that I have in tough business decisions, don't take too long. The longer there are a lot of people who sit on it. I think that's one big difference that I have run my businesses with, or my leadership style has been different. If there's anything most difficult, I probably try to make a decision immediately,
Mhm.
not delay it even overnight,
Makes sense.
because it's easy to digest a difficult call where it's taken quick.
Yes, yes. And sometimes you never know, because you think too much. You go to analysis paralysis,
Yes.
you're keep judging yourself, and you don't make any decision.
And then we're all guilty of it. That's why
Yes.
I'm saying I try to practice it to make decisions quickly. Not everybody has the ability because they want to see decisions, the
Different
variations
scenarios.
and everything.
Yes, you're right.
But sometimes your first gut feel is correct. So I usually, if it's a difficult situation, I try to make decision as quickly as I can.
And I can tell you, if you're coming from service background, then you go more into this scenario planning.
Yeah, exactly. So the analysis paralysis is a real thing when you come from a service background because
Service background.
you're thinking about every possible angle because you can't afford to lose a penny.
Definitely. And that's the bias you talk about. I really liked it. Like you coming from that background and making that big, I think that's a really good learning for all of us.
I know, and I appreciate the time that you've taken to help me present this thing today, and hopefully your viewers will enjoy it as well.
They will definitely. There's a lot to learn. But before you go, I will ask you one more thing. There's a lot to learn from you, but if you have to summarize one key takeaway for somebody who's looking to make big in this energy industry, what that it would be.
I think one of the key things that I've seen in the energy industry where people have gone wrong, I think they lose patience.
Mhm.
This is not an industry where you can come in and expect to be everything that you want to be overnight. You have to understand the industry. You have to practice. You have to learn. You have to make the right connections. And you have to be lucky. So, so putting all those things together, I think one of the key things is just stay focused. Don't let other things just take you away. If you stay focused, at the end, this industry has a longer cycle, but as the cycle turns, you benefit from it.
And
But if
definitely,
you're gone before that cycle turns because you ran out of patience, then you don't get that opportunity.
you made a really good point. Like in 2020, when oil price went into negative, like who
Mhm.
thought it will come back? But as you
And
said,
to
like
this
if
level where
somebody
it
had
is today.
definitely, if somebody had patience, then they could have made it big. So really good
100%.
point. I will just add to it. Like this oil and gas industry is not going anywhere. It has survived many cycles, and it will continue to survive and to make it big.
Yes, it would. God bless everybody for that because we need energy.
Thank you so much for your time, Swapan. And I will say Crown will make it big. As we met before in Gas Tech, I'm looking for another Gas Tech, which is coming soon in a couple of months. And I'm looking forward to see what Crown has done since then. But with that, I will say like you're helping a lot, bringing new idea, new innovation. As we said before, the world is energy hungry, and we need to provide the energy at the right price at the right time, and the location is also very important to cut off all the transportation cost. So before we go, anything to add here, Sopan?
No, I think I want to thank you and your team on behalf of Crown for having us. And Crown is going to do whatever it can. It's whatever small little portion it can play to improvise and to better our industry. We will take those steps. That's all I can say. And we are trying to bring gas to areas where other people have failed.
And that's a big thing. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today. Keep listening, Oil and Gas Breaking by show. See you next week. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.